Welcome, everybody, to the show. Joining me is our regular co-host and fellow traveler, Dan the Dan Noodles Man, the unfortunate General Mac of Wargaming. Our very special guest this evening. I was pleased, by the way, but we'll talk about that in a second. Joining me tonight is our very special guest tonight to talk about Ridley Scott's made-for-television movie Napoleon, Jim Owczarski, who is my personal Napoleonic guru. So, Jim, thanks for coming by. And I'm also pleased to say that we have just spent 10 minutes of pushing buttons to get Jim into an increased state of agitation.
You know what, Jim? That was unfair. We should not have done that because it primed you too much.
I pushed 0 buttons. There were 0 buttons.
No, because I was laughing my brains out. Because it's right what he was saying, man. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, Christ, he nailed it right on. Exactly. But the thing is that Jim Owczarski, with all due respect, being a Napoleonic historian, it's going to be hard for you, Jim, to be taken seriously when you talk about historicity.
Well, let's talk about the movie before we talk about historicity. Jim, so let me start out with this question. What did you think of the inspired casting decision to cast Jack Elam as Wellington?
Here's the tragedy. My wife
and Walter Koenig as Talleyrand.
Yeah, no, you're doing it on purpose, Artie. You're doing it on purpose.
I'm so mad about that Talleyrand casting. Talleyrand is on my very, very short list of men who need a movie and don't have one yet.
Totally. Along with our man Davu as well.
Oh,
goes without saying.
I mean, come on now. I mean, I got the head, and I'll shave my mouth. I'm thinking I could make it happen, and I'm certainly nearsighted enough. But no, it's Jack Elam casting that actor. And my wife is far and away the expert because after every movie we go see, because my wife, my wife actually hated the movie more than I did as a technical piece.
No shit.
As a technical piece, she does video editing for a living. She is at the Milwaukee Arena where our local hockey team and one of our local basketball teams plays. The Jumbotron, that's hers. She edits videos for that. And yeah, John, buckle up, man.
John, thanks for the support. You're going to get your money's worth here tonight.
I promise. And so she does that. And so she's also a cine geek. And so we always unpack and I say, okay, who is that guy? She showed me the transitions he's made. He was actually quite the handsome fellow in his youth, but he has had some dramatic and horrific plastic surgery in a desperate attempt to maintain his youth. And it has rendered him looking, as you correctly say, I did a finger. Remember that from Cannonball Run?
No, well, hold on. Jim, you being a historian, a Napoleonic historian, and your wife being actually in movies and editing, you're for sure not taken seriously.
No, and I get but your point is valid. Your point is valid because everybody I've criticized this to said, "Oh, you just don't like the history." They even go so far. There are people who creep over into the rubbish that Ridley Scott is spewing about. Oh, you weren't there. You don't know. We have to lower our blood pressure. But let's talk about the Jack Elam casting. Look, but to your, Dan, almost to your point, those shoes were unfair. Because Christopher Plummer is the Duke of Wellington. Christopher
like
Plummer.
Wellington even?
He looked like him. He acts like him. He behaved like the gentleman Wellington always was. Wellington was a jerk. Don't get it.
In your romantic view of the Duke?
No. I mean, Wellington is an ass. He's a straight ass. He's called the Iron Duke, not because of anything he ever did on the battlefield. He's called the Iron Duke because when he becomes the prime minister of all England, he moves to a house that to this day, Apsley House, is still 1 London. That's his address. He moves to a place that's like, if you got a mail, where's this going? 1 London. Okay, there it is. And you can tour it. It's beautiful. Marcus Cribb, who's actually appeared on one of my podcasts playing a game, he was the keeper of Apsley House for many, many years. But anyway, absolutely housed. That was just it. When he was there, he was so unpopular because of certain bills he was trying to pass that people gathered outside and started throwing things at his windows. He had iron shutters put up. And so he became known as the Iron Duke because the hat doesn't work on the camera, Brent.
Or the headphones.
Or the head, right, that too. But the point being, he's a jerk. And the things he says and I'm speaking here, of course, 1970, the movie everybody should watch instead of this, watch Waterloo, 1970s Waterloo, when he enters the Duchess of Richmond's ball and walks through and says two things. He's asked about Napoleon, says, oh, he's no gentleman. And that's clearly, he's just dismissing him. And it's a beautiful, very British thing. And the other one is when he's talking about his own troops, the very people he's going to Waterloo was, yeah, exactly. He's a complete twit. He is.
And Jim, are you talking about the Rod Steiger Waterloo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is the same movie. And
Yeah.
Wellington, for those who don't know,
it seems definitive, that movie.
It is to the state. How's that?
It is. And I've got issues with the movie cinematically, mostly with the soundtrack, to be honest, but also with we've got all these colorful characters that get no screen time. But at least the battle's great, and it's in some of the photography in there is absolutely insanely good.
Well, and in fairness, you're never going to see it again either. But
no. And you've got marvelous performances by both Rod Steiger and Christopher Plummer. So it's got that going for it.
So, I mean, so just to respond to your point, no, it's not because I have an idealized vision of him at all. I don't. I know his flaws. I know his limitations. And in fact, there's another lovely scene. It's something that Achilles from the podcast and I, always are trading back and forth. There's a lovely line when his commanders all gather around him while he's sleeping under Napoleon's elm or Wellington's elm at the Battle of Waterloo, and he's got a newspaper over his face. And they say, I am your second in command. What is your plan? To beat the French. That's actually a dick move if you think about it. Mm-hmm. It's like, what do you mean? No, you're not going to tell us? No. It's so great.
Wellington famously described his own troops at Waterloo as the scum of the earth.
Seriously,
used that as its title. Yeah.
And he uses that line in Waterloo in the movie, and he also says gin is the color of their patriotism. And then the Duchess of Richmond says, and you expect them to die for you.
Yes. And Jim, what about the old? Is it Russian already? That movie there, the black and white one, one of the first Napoleon.
The Abel Gance, the black and white, the silent film.
Yeah, the silent film. How old is that?
I've never seen that.
1927. It's hard to get a hold of.
Or is it French?
It's inside. It's a silent. So the subtitles.
Yeah, so it's kind of irrelevant to me.
No. I'm talking about what country did that movie?
France. It's the guy who did Austerlitz. It's the same guy, Abel Gance. He came out of silence and attempted to do a talkie, and it didn't go so great. But so it's better than this movie.
Jim, just to bust your balls, because I'm busting your balls here.
Go.
What about that movie there? What do you say?
That's a wonderful movie. It's funny. I was talking to one of the guys about Gance's Waterloo, Napoleon, which is sitting in one of these cases right here. I've got it in a PAL version. I don't know as there is an NTSC one that's available. It is a silent movie. It was insanely ambitious for its time, but it has
in an era where most silent movies are like half an hour long, right?
Exactly.
It's like, what, 3 or 4 hours?
Well, and it's not even his whole life. He ran out of time, really.
Physical film.
Yeah, right. They lost patience with it. It is an important piece of cinema history. I would certainly recommend anyone watch it, and I'd watch that 17 times before I watch this one.
So let's talk about what I felt to be the most disappointing part of the film.
As film or as history?
You'll know when I say it, because it's not the history, right? I expected a loose interpretation of historical events and maybe even historical characters.
At the most, I expect.
So say we all. Say we all.
To me, the most disappointing part of the entire thing was the absolutely boat-sinking performance provided by Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh my God, I haven't seen it.
Is that script, direction, or actor?
probably, I think it's all three are contributing factors. I think I doubt there was, I mean, it didn't feel like there was direction, because I got basically the same performance out of this that I got out of Joaquin Phoenix and Joker. It's the same performance.
But
At no
Joker
point does he convey the brilliance of Napoleon. And again, you can be pro Napoleon or anti Napoleon. He's still the best military leader of the era, particularly early in the era. And in no sense is that ever conveyed. He
and
is
talking about Joaquin,
and that's a script thing, right? And an editing thing too is possible. Maybe all the good parts of the performance got cut and will be in the extended version.
Yeah, are you
I doubt
kidding?
it.
Nothing can save that.
If you
if
look at that,
it's that bad.
Look at that scene. It's toward the end of the Bondarchuk Waterloo, and toward the end of this, where he encounters the soldiers of the Fifth.
Okay.
It's electrifying in Waterloo with Rod Steiger.
It's terrifying and electrifying and exciting. And you believe, but Bondarchuk gets you to believe they might have shot him.
Yeah.
You know, that the soldiers of the Fifth might have shot him. You see, because Rod Steiger is one of the great actors of his generation, you see in his face, without a word, that he's going, I could be dead. I could be dead. They might shoot me. Okay, let's do this.
That's really nice.
It's it. Where am I going to go? And we have before it the incredibly. It's just a mumbled line from one of the old guard. There's no way around. The way is forward. and Steiger and Napoleon knows that. No, and I will absolutely defend this. There has yet to be a good young Napoleon that I'm aware of. Abel Gantz's Napoleon is pretty good. But there's yet to be a definitive young Napoleon. Rod Steiger yards old Napoleon.
Yeah.
You know, he is brilliant at conveying the sense of, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Dude, you're almost dying. You are literally to the point of dying. You know, so.
I find this totally believable, personally.
I'm sorry.
And remember that Ridley Scott has worked with Joaquin Phoenix to good effect before. I mean, I like Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator, for example. He's a great villain. He's a psychopath, right? That totally works. And you get the vibe you get out of this movie is certainly shades of psychopath, but you don't get. Why is anybody following this mumbling nincompoop?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost played for laughs.
Oh yes, there are moments, particularly around the coup of 18th Brumaire, that make you believe they're going for shtick. That sliding down the stairway thing.
What?
This is not Napoleon's finest moment historically.
No, but the point is that moment is so critical, and that moment where and you're taking a side in that moment. What we're talking about here, we are at the Tuileries. There's this gathering of people it's a coup. He's establishing a coup. And there's a huge debate about what happened. What exactly happened? Was Napoleon's life ever threatened? Really? Certainly Lucien, his brother, who's barely identified. Lucien convinces the crowd, oh yes, he was attacked. But there are people who say nothing of the kind happened.
Okay. Look, guys, I'm lost. Okay, set me straight here. Who was sliding down the banister?
It's not the banister. It's stairs. It's what has happened is Napoleon and the two other members of what would become the Directory
in the Ridley Scott movie.
Well, in history. In history, these people get together on what's called 18th Brumaire. It's a date in November on the regular calendar. But they've gotten together and they're trying to form a coup to overthrow the old system and replace it with the consulship, which is who they want to be. And it goes, to Artie's point, it goes terribly. You know, there's supposed to be all this, huzzah, we have this great leader in Napoleon. No, it's not. And he has to get out of there by the skin of his teeth. And there's an accusation made that he's even assaulted as a dictator and threatened to be stabbed with one of their knives. They stage it in a beautiful way. They show us the costumes, but the way the story is told is it makes a nonsense of the facts. And in all of that, you have a sequence in which Napoleon rushes out of the crowd, runs down a flight of stairs, and as he gets to the flight of stairs, trips and slides and bounces down the stairs. Now, I leave completely to the side that didn't happen. There's no evidence that happened whatsoever. But that having been said, what's that for? How does that advance your narrative other than back to Artie's point?
And that's the other, like,
make it a moment of humor.
That's the other festering pile of remains that I found was that the narrative of the film is simply completely incoherent.
Yeah.
It is. I thought to its credit, I think the costumes are really good.
They are.
I think.
And by the way, did you notice? By the way, they dressed Napoleon in different costumes as he went through life.
Yes, I did.
I like that. I
had him in that bullfighter hat, right?
Yeah, his bullfighter, and then he got his reds. He got his lovely reds that most people don't notice, but he's wearing them briefly. And then all of a sudden, he's oh boy, and
he's gonna get punched.
You're gonna get it. and then he shows up, in his Imperial Guard uniform, in his his guard uniform. So that was cool. I like that.
Okay, but they're like the narrative through line is just non-existent in this thing, right?
I was going to say, what narrative through line
individually,
narrative through line were you referring?
By scene, we were talking before the show about Napoleon. Some stuff happens, and then Napoleon's in Egypt. Why? We don't know. And then they shoot some, and then there's going to be a battle, and they shoot the pyramids, and
the Mamluks fall.
Leaves. Yeah,
we shoot the pyramids and the Mamluks fall apart. I mean, it's only one of the most dramatic moments in human. And it's funny. Juan Coles is one of the great. He's not a historian of Napoleon. He's a historian of the Near East, and he's actually written a book about this. Napoleon's campaign in Egypt has immense consequences for the later history of the Middle East.
Oh,
it affects
absolutely.
It affects the way we think about it. It affects the way we get the Rosetta Stone, which is kind of cool. But it all these other things come about as the result of it, and it's dismissed by group of Mamluks running in circle, fire at pyramid. They fall down. Murat tells him that Josephine is hammering Hippolyte Chard, and he goes home.
Hammering, yes,
hammering. Oh, and he talks to a mummy. I know what they're doing with that. There's a painting of that.
Yeah, we weren't there, so we don't really know.
Well, he might have been hammering her. She might have been hammering him.
So, guys,
we're not going to kink shame.
Is there any saving grace, even thinking that Ridley Scott is 86 years old, has the clout to just shut everybody up and do this movie?
Well, I don't know that he's shutting anybody up. There's plenty of people with an opinion here.
No, I know. I'm talking about on set.
I would have had zero issue had they used in the film the completely apocryphal Napoleon's cannons shoot the nose off the Sphinx. That's legendary, right? People said that. I can understand that. I have no particular problems with the film's closing lines, which, supposedly Napoleon's last words, which are, also almost certainly apocryphal. The history that it doesn't adhere to the history is much less important than it is a turd of a film to me. And in some places, the photography is very good. In some places, at least. I mean, I heard somebody said there's like no CGI in it, but there's like clearly CGI.
Oh my God, there's a bull ton. Borodino and Austerlitz are entirely CGI.
Yeah, some very bad CGI at that.
Artie, as much as Jim is perceived, you can't be serious because you're an expert, and his wife, you being a war gamer, same thing. They're just being too picky. They're being too picky. They had to figure out this. They got it. Everything has to be right.
Now, this is a great example, actually, of a scene that's like I don't like this. This feels like a different movie, possibly Bill and Ted being involved in the other movie, where it's like played for laughs, where Napoleon goes up to they pull the mummy out, the open his sarcophagus, there's a mummy in there, and Napoleon wants to look the mummy in the eye, so he goes and gets a box to stand on.
Because we have to have a short joke.
Yeah, I mean, this is played for laughs. This feels like it's from a different screenplay.
Well, there's a couple of things. That scene is recreating a painting. There's a famous painting of that.
Okay.
Of that moment. So I get that.
Standing on a box in the painting too.
The box piece. the box penis is that standard cheap shot, and I got news for you. There's no universe in which that sarcophagus is taller than Napoleon.
That's a fair point, actually.
Egyptians, go look at your mummies. Tell me how many of them crossed 5'5".
Yeah.
If you want to get weird about it.
This is true too. Napoleon was of more or less within the average height range of his time.
It was a bit of very successful British propaganda.
Yeah, of the diminutive Napoleon.
I'm not wearing a coat. I'm wearing a T-shirt.
Longshore, that's one of my favorite sketches of all time. Is a fast man in a little coat. But
I suppose I will be happy if one, out of the probably millions of people who will end up seeing this movie one way or the other, whether in theaters or on cable, or on streaming or whatever, I will be pleased if it gets one of those people to watch a better movie about Napoleon, or even better, read a book about Napoleon. Doesn't even have to be a good book, right? Doesn't have to be Chandler. I'll settle for whatever.
There's a lovely, you can buy it at I think they're available stateside, but you can buy them I bought my copy at the Army Museum in Paris. There's a lovely comic book of Napoleon's life. It's a series. It's quite good.
Oh, that's interesting. I have not seen that.
Read you a good Napoleon comic book.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we said this on the show or behind the or in the green room, whatever you want to call it. How many times are you going to see a Napoleonic movie made by an esteemed director in your lifetime?
Fair enough. And I'm going to throw a link into the chat on that topic. I'm going to throw a link into the chat to Jim's article over on the Armchair Dragoon site about the movies you should watch instead of this one.
Whoa. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, oh, there we go. I did this, and I'm very explicit about it, not because I'm going after the history, because I'm sure we're going to get there, and I think we all want to spend at least 5 minutes beating the ever-loving Christ out of Ridley Scott for that gibberish.
Oh no, he totally deserves it. Tarring and feathering was my
but as
possibly tied up in a sack with some large rocks and thrown overboard.
Yeah, let me share my wife's. As I was sharing with the gentleman, my wife does video for a living, and she often has some really insightful thoughts. Yes. No, The Duelist is on my list, parenthetically. Thank you very much.
It is. And it's a terrific movie.
It's by the same guy. How is that? Yeah. That's what makes this more aggravating.
That's by Ridley Scott?
Yes. It's a magnificent movie. Harvey Keitel incorporates the Napoleonic bitter enders in that better than anything I've ever seen on film. He is, he shows you, he evokes in this little story of just two guys who, because of the tiniest little slight, will not stop dueling each other for a decade, even as the Napoleonic Wars are happening behind them. And there are these scenes in Germany, particularly, that are, to me, that's what it would have looked like to be a hussar out in the fringes of the Napoleonic Empire. It's so great. How did the same guy do this? But no, my wife, who does video professionally, her comments were as follows. Number one, watch for it, folks. The continuity errors are amazing.
Seriously?
The greatest one being Napoleon's Elm, one of the most significant features of the Battle of Waterloo, appears, vanishes, reappears, and vanishes.
What about the horse and him?
During the course of the battle. How do you not check that?
Well, he got turned around in the wrong way when leading the cavalry charge.
Oh, it was that cavalry charge. We're not there yet.
Okay.
Number two, the soundtrack is terrible.
Who did it?
It's very.
It's a weird. Yeah, this is another thing about talking about my disappointment with the movie. I was 100% geeked to walk out of it, go to iTunes or wherever, and grab me that and just have that be my listening for a week. It was terrible.
A soundtrack will really elevate or flatten a film, in my opinion. And this is the single weakest part of the Rod Steiger Waterloo film, in my opinion, is the soundtrack is it's very old time. It's like a 20-year-old soundtrack when it was made, let alone how it sounds now. Certainly fair. Right? It's a 1950s soundtrack for a movie that was made in the 70s.
No, it's a guy called Martin Phipps.
Well, okay, Martin Phipps should maybe think about, change
track. Well, not that I'm an authority on soundtrack.
Hey, music's hit and miss, right? We got, a brilliant Pink Floyd albums and Pink Floyd albums that are less brilliant, right? So
Yep.
maybe he's just had a bad day, and then another bad day, and another bad day, and when he started having a bad day, the work was done. So, but no, I thought the soundtrack, I was invisible. I mean, it was completely invisible,
except when it was obnoxious.
Yeah.
Except when there were scenes in which I was like, "Shut up, shut up! We're trying to do something here."
Okay, because if it's neutral, that's fine.
No, it's not wallpaper. That's the problem. It tries to be artistic, and there are scenes that are just that are made worse. They're already bad. The third,
so disappointed.
The third piece that she raised,
you haven't even seen it. You have yet to begin to be disappointed.
We have not yet begun to fail. The third would definitely be what you pointed out, Artie, was simply the narrative or lack thereof.
Yeah, it's absolutely incorrect.
Now, what's your story?
Important observation here, though, is think about the theatrical cut of the Kingdom of Heaven, right?
Yes.
Which, while I don't think it was this incoherent, was also a big mess.
Assuredly.
And that was more or less fixed in the director's extended, whatever they're calling it, cut, right? And we're assured that we're going to get a director's cut of this as well.
And I will watch it.
Will the director's cut fix it?
No. Not from what you guys are saying.
I don't. You can't fix. You might be able to fix the narrative problems,
possibly,
if they're missing pieces.
Second. That's huge, man. Are you talking about?
Oh, it is.
You could have just simply dropped pieces on the,
So look, if you're saying that the director's cut can be possibly saved, then the movie isn't as bad as you guys are saying. How bad it is?
I can still say it's bad.
It's bad for reasons over and above the disjointed narrative, right? Interestingly, I imagine this will be the case given the focus of the theatrical cut, but I thought Josephine was one of the better parts of the movie. Actually, the character of Josephine and the actress, Vanessa Kirby, who I thought did very well as Josephine. I mean,
she's very lovely, and she looks like Josephine.
Yeah, and she's too. I mean, remember, Josephine, as has been pointed out 1 billion times now, Josephine is older, significantly older than Napoleon.
Yes.
I was pleased that Eugène got at least a little.
Okay, now I was hoping that at some point Dan was going to ask me if I liked anything, and the answer is yes.
No,
I loved
the levels.
I loved the scene with Eugène.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool scene.
Eugène,
it's the apocryphal version of that.
Yes, by the way. That is the alleged story.
Cool. That's
great. That's it. It's like, do you see me? I said I loved it, not because it's part of the legend. And as we learned in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, this is the West. When the truth is better than the legend is better than the truth, print the legend. Mm-hmm. It is such a beautiful moment. For those who haven't seen it, I don't care. I'm spoiling it. As Artie said, it's a well-known piece of alleged history. The reason allegedly Napoleon really meets Josephine is that she sends her son by her previous husband, General Beauharnais, to see Napoleon, who's in a ministerial role, to get her ex-husband's sword back. And a young Eugène appears before him, pleads for it, and Napoleon is very taken with the young man and gives him the sword back. He asks him, and those words are what's reported. That's what's not. It's mystifying. It's not like he doesn't know it because it's right there. Napoleon says, "Well, you do. Why would I give you a sword back? That's a weapon." And he raised it against the Republic, and he said, "No, it is my memory of him." And he gives it back to him, and he in fact doesn't give it back to him. He delivers it to Josephine. It's a beautiful little scene, and I have a personal affection for Eugène because he's the one relative by birth or blood or that actually stays loyal to Napoleon
and is competent.
Yes, and he's buried in Munich. Actually, he's buried among the Bavarian royalty, and I've been to his tomb, and so I've always had a little bit of a tie to the guy. So seeing that scene, I was like, oh, it's a little early in the movie, so I'm like, oh, okay, maybe we're gonna get our feet back underneath us. Maybe this first stuff was terrible, and now it's going to be good because it's a little scene with a lot of good setting, and it's like, and then it fell right off the rails.
Okay,
so I got to actually ask Jim a question about what happened in the movie now because I dozed off during
You
Austerlitz.
dozed off.
It was that
During
bad.
Austerlitz.
Oh, I believe it. I was just filled with horror. I couldn't sleep. Go ahead.
So do they
During
show?
Austerlitz.
I mean, they don't show the. I vaguely remember in a fever thing that there was the cannons and the ice and the thousands of soldiers plunging to an icy tomb, which is again part of the legend that I could have accepted had the rest that had like not the entire scene hinged on that. But
Okay.
do they did I miss because I dozed off? Did I miss Davout marching to the rescue at Austerlitz, or was that just left out too?
Well, first of all, this is the first little sneak into the history piece. None of the battlefields have terrain in them.
That's true.
They're ping pong tables.
I particularly found that interesting at, say, Borodino.
Oh, there were no readouts. There
Right.
were no villages. There were no rivers. There were nothing.
Nitpicky.
Yeah. Just a big old ping pong table with lines of dudes running at each other. That's what Napoleonic battlefields look like. That was it, huh? So, to your question, there is a narrative piece, much like I said off air. Watch this movie, folks. Forget about the history. Forget it. Watch this movie and tell me why Napoleon goes to Egypt.
Okay.
Tell me why. Same thing. Watch this movie and tell me what the stakes are at Austerlitz.
Can I ask a stupid question, but ultimate stupid?
Ooh.
Yeah. Josephine.
Yeah.
How much in history of a factor was she?
That relationship is fascinating. Has been the subject of better. It has been a subject of better films. First of all, he's actually not at the Pratzen. He's at the far end of them. The Pratzen Heights are behind them. But if you're talking about where they're fighting, they're down in the valley.
No, I'm talking about.
No. There was a question somebody just put up.
I'm sorry.
Here's another question.
And it made sense.
Before we start getting into the history, because we're at about the right time to do that, I want to ask, who's the dude on the battlefield with Napoleon at Waterloo? Is that supposed to be Ney?
Yes.
With a beard?
Yeah. And no red hair.
No. I was like, is that supposed to? Because he says a very Ney-like thing.
That is Ney. I looked it up in the credits. I had to go.
Where do you guys get your info?
What do I read a couple
no,
of books.
I have my wife who then goes on to IMDb and looks up who's who.
Oh yeah, you can find anything, right? I was excited.
How do you know they had a beard or not at that date?
I was so excited that there's there's Davout in the cast list.
And where is he? Nobody knows.
He stands in the background when Napoleon abdicates.
Yeah,
that's like the only place I spotted him.
Right.
Oh man.
No, but to answer your question, Napoleon Josephine, it's been done by better. It's been written about. There have been plays, movies, books. In terms of Napoleon's life, I'd give it well into the 80s.
80%.
80% consequential to him in terms of the significance to him.
She mattered to him at 80%.
80%. First of all, he doesn't rise without his, especially early on, he doesn't rise without her relationship to her ex-lover, Paul Bellat.
Who's in the movie?
He's in there, and we don't understand who he is or why he's important, but we're told he's there. We also don't know that he's also Josephine's ex-lover.
He pawned her off on Napoleon to get rid of her.
Yes, because he was done with her.
Are we talking emotionally or
politically?
Politically, exactly.
She is his connection. First of all, he's this kind of weedy, sallow complected, poor, half, So yeah, he was said to be yellow complected. He wasn't eating well.
Jesus.
Yeah, he was not a treat to look at.
Brian, no, that's Thursday, Fred.
So he was always a little bit, undesirable, and he was
ugly.
Well, we agree, Achilles.
I would love a Bernadotte film. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating character.
You know what?
Are you taunting? Is that what you're doing?
I'm just saying. No, I'm just saying. Bernadotte is a fascinating character. Not as good a general as Devon.
Are you taunting? It ain't personal, Jim. It ain't personal.
This is an ongoing conversation. Let's put it that way. The Davout versus Bernadotte feud.
There's
Still,
yeah.
it's still a simmering here today.
I repeat that is never. And Napoleon should have let Davout kill him. But that's neither here nor there at this time. Returning to your question, she gets him into politics. She shows him polite society. She also then becomes he's passionately in love with her for a long time, and she also becomes the one person he really trusts. It seems pretty clear. He dumps her because she cannot have a child. That's why he does it. And he goes off and he has other affairs and he does other things. But when she passes, he legitimately grieves. I mean, even his worst enemies admit that he grieves deeply when she dies. And so I would, she was, if there is such a thing, she was the one true love of his life, other than, of course, himself. And I'm the first one to admit that Napoleon was first in love with himself.
Now here's a differing opinion, and you know what? If anybody went into that movie and had a good time, great. I am happy they enjoyed it. Frank liked it.
Now, what kind of person would have a good time in that movie? Great question.
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it from that angle at all. I mean, I think we've been pretty clear here, Jim, that we expect deviations from the history. You're obviously squeezing it 2 decades into 2.5 hours.
We're being diplomatic here.
You're going to lose a lot of. I'm not being diplomatic. I'm setting it up. Okay.
I know you're setting it up.
So I think the issues both you and I had were narrative, technical, and performances.
Yes. The script is bad, the narrative is bad, the directing is bad, the scene setting is bad, the video is bad. You may not like movie reviews, which is fine if you want to go and look at it, you don't like them. But if movie reviewing is a thing, it's not puerile. It's not puerile to review a movie. You could disagree, but
I think it's puerile because we're just bitching. But that's okay. That's literally why we are here tonight.
Yeah,
you're getting it off our chest.
I can cop to that,
so we can move on and never talk about it again.
Jim.
Yeah, sorry.
Are you a cinephile?
Yeah, I less than I used to be when I had more time.
That's fine.
I don't have time.
That's great.
Yeah,
I don't have time to see as many movies. This is
I regret that parenthetically, but what are you gonna do?
I'm gonna point out that I saw in the movie theater Battlefield Earth.
God bless you. Me too.
And I was more entertained by that than I was.
Absolutely no question.
I am not saying it's a better movie. I don't think it is.
No.
But certainly on the technical aspects alone.
I like Cocaine Bear a lot more.
I haven't seen that and have no plans to. But I laughed uproariously at 2012, which is definitely a worse movie than this, to be honest. I thought that was hilarious. I had a good time having left the theater. This was probably my worst theater experience from the movie as opposed to Disruptive Individuals in a long time, to be honest. Yeah, really? I was very unhappy.
Likewise.
So, and a lot of that's disappointment, right? I mean, had we not been really hyped about seeing this, we'd be less that you'd be like, that's a missed opportunity. But
we have a vote for Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Bear lobby has entered the chat.
Cocaine Bear was true to its title.
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. I mean, Cocaine Bear, you knew what it was walking in. I've read Battlefield Earth, the book, several times. It's pulpy and fun to read, and I read it till the book. I mean, admittedly, it was poorly bound. I read it till it fell apart.
Fun in a 1950s type of style, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a little. I mean, and it's certainly got a lot of L. Ron Hubbard built into it, right? But of course, it's not so overwhelming that you can't ignore it and just kind of roll with this kind of huge story.
I know we're talking about Napoleonics here. Jim, you're a World War II fan also, right?
Sure thing.
Okay. So are we going to have this conversation when Tom Hanks and Spielberg's series comes out of B-17?
Jesus, I hope not.
Masters of the Air. Yeah.
Seriously?
Well, actually, what I would recommend to anybody, it's a fascinating video. Little Wars TV did a great job talking about where the Pacific went wrong and why it did not succeed the way Band of Brothers did. Yeah, Greg Wegman, I think, wants to get himself a second career in film history analysis, which he's not, because his piece on the Alamo is very good.
So give me the one-sentence synopsis of why
exactly. Thank you.
It was incredibly bad timing. Well, he actually says two things. Incredibly bad timing, because right as this is coming out is the end of DVDs. Band of Brothers made the vast majority of its money on DVDs. It may have sold at $500 million in DVDs.
But that's a beautiful series.
Oh, it's wonderful.
The Pacific is real. I thought the Pacific was really good too, but I didn't think it was as good.
No, and that's his other point. But the reason he said it was darker. It's harder to identify, but he also thought it lacked focus. Whereas Band of Brothers is easy company through the whole thing.
Yes.
The Pacific is here and here and here and here and here and here. And I think, if I recall correctly, and I've not seen it in some time, the main characters never meet.
I think that's true. I mean, it's based, unlike Band of Brothers, which is based on a single Stephen Ambrose book.
Yes.
Where it's kind of, that's the core, and they did a lot of extra research to help flesh out the world of Band of Brothers, right? But the core is there in the Stephen Ambrose book.
Yes.
Whereas the Pacific is based on 3 different memoirs, 3 different guys who who were on the ground, and then they add Barcelona in too, who didn't write a memoir because he didn't survive the war. So it's got like these parallel stories that feel disconnected in comparison to this single narrative through line that we saw in Band of Brothers, for example, and which goes in a lot of different directions over the course of it, right? But you have a core of characters in there that you could kind of follow through the whole thing.
He argues that they might have been better served. I don't know if it's true or not, because I still think it was quite an achievement that they would have been better just using With the Old Breed.
I think which is a terrific book, by the way.
It is.
It is. I think that's probably a good. I mean, I didn't think it was bad in any.
No,
sense.
No, and it just
wasn't
was
as strong,
and
right?
it didn't reach out behind. We're all nerds for this, right? We're gonna come up to that with our hands outstretched. Please give me more, give me more. The broader community that embraced Band of Brothers really did embrace the Pacific.
No,
the real question you want to ask, Dan, was going for comedy night. Yeah, no, there's an argument to be made for this one.
I'm just saying.
I've wondered this. I have wondered this in the 2 weeks since.
And I don't think it successfully pulls this off. Right?
If he does it, he certainly failed at it. But I wondered.
It is entirely possible. I don't know that we've seen one. We've seen individual bits, like Out of Time Bandits, for example, to do a Napoleonic comedy, a comedy about Napoleon. Mm-hmm. I'd be interested in seeing that. Right. That's not what this is, but there are places in the movie where it feels like it, and then other places where that tone is completely absent. It feels tonally disjointed.
Like, why is a Napoleonic comedy interesting? As Stalin's comedy.
Death of Stalin. That's the exact example I was going to use.
Right? It's fluff.
Well, but I mean,
no.
Death of Stalin.
I'm not saying fluff.
I guarantee you the history in Death of Stalin is 1,000 times better.
Everything in there happened.
Okay.
They moved the order around.
It's 1,000 times better. The fact that they chose different dialects of British English to represent the different ways they spoke in Russian.
I have emphasized this point repeatedly. I think it's brilliant.
That's genius.
And in places, different dialects.
Yeah, Stalin speaks a Cockney because he was Georgian, and he spoke. Everybody thought he talked like a hick. They never say it.
Jim, did you steal my script or something here?
Did I really?
Yeah, I literally said this
like you telling me that
in the last couple of weeks.
That director or whoever was taking care of the historicity of the Stalin's movie that we're talking about focused on the accents.
Yes,
of the different generals and different.
Well, everybody plays with their natural accent. I mean, you know that this is going to it's going to be a complete disaster, or that this must be the case when they hire Steve Buscemi to play Khrushchev.
It's such a genius casting.
And he's great.
Oh my God!
Come on,
Jason Isaacs is amazing.
When Steve Buscemi goes home after the first scene we see him in, and is talking to his wife, and she's jotting down the jokes that worked and the jokes that didn't, and he's like, "All right, remember, no more farmer jokes." All right. Remember, he liked the one about the cowboy. All right. He did that. He did that.
Okay.
all that stuff. The thing about that where he
Seriously?
wants the recording of the opera performance,
Yes.
and they didn't record it, so they have to like get everybody back in there like in the middle of the night to re-record the thing.
With an
That happened
audience.
too. Yeah, that all that happened too. It's so it's a comedy, right? It's a black comedy. Now, Jim, I want you to picture in your mind in terms of this sort of
the history,
this sort of dual nature of that movie, right? Where it gets the history right, which is great, but not necessary.
No.
And think about the tone of the movie and how it's real historical events played for laughs, and then the end of Beria in that movie, which is hilarious and it's chilling at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the Saddam Hussein recording.
And the crazy part is, as people who know the history, because historians of the period have taken apart that movie and said, this is great, but let me tell you what happened. That's what's different here. The people that touch on
there's nothing to hang that on here.
Right. The people doing Death of Stalin, they'll tell you, oh, Beria, he was bad like it shows. He was actually 20 times worse. When they did repairs on that dude's house after his fall, they found the bones of 5 teenage girls.
Yeah, but he's nuts.
That he, because so that here's that guy. But Artie, you're absolutely right. That scene is both hysterical. Yeah, and look, I would watch. I kind of always wanted to watch just the Zukov movie.
Oh, it's with Jason Isaacs as Zukov.
Yeah. I want to watch. I want to watch that movie. I want to watch him do the entire Second World War.
But you know that Death of Stalin. You're saying it's a comedy. Obviously, it's a dark comedy. Obviously.
Very much so. It's about Stalin, Dan.
Nothing's funny, really. Nothing's really funny.
Dark comedy based on some serious reality, man.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And
it's
so there's a pathos to it, man.
It makes a profound. If you step back from it, and I don't want to be too much cinema auteur here, but the thing that I've actually taught classes around Death of Stalin to talk about totalitarianism. It was the paralyzing effect of totalitarianism. Those people were so scared after so many years.
This is the parallel we should both have drawn already, by the way, Jim.
Yeah.
Was this whole thing just a tax write-off? Was this time for Hitler?
Well, we've already seen the numbers. It's already fallen 63% off the first week, and according to the numbers that Apple TV has released, it won't make $200 million. It won't make the $200 million cost of production, which leaves aside promotion and all the other things you got to spend, which means it is going to be a significant flop.
Okay, so no break even there.
Well,
springtime for Bernadotte.
Yes, but. But Hollywood has all kinds of making money after the fact. After it's done.
Oh no, they'll make more money with the 4.5 hour cut.
Yeah. People will buy the DVD. There will be people that liked it. But
if it's that shy, why would you spend money on the director's cut?
It's hard for me to understand. It is difficult for me to understand.
Are we that stupid?
Are there movie critics that liked it? I didn't look at Rotten Tomatoes.
Rotten Tomatoes is very, very low. There were 1 or 2 that liked it, but most either saw it as a middling effort or less.
Okay, because I'd be curious to read their takes on it and see those who liked it. Right, it'd be more fun, I should say, to read the absolute lambasting that I'm sure it's gotten in a number of quarters. But I'd be curious to see the movie critical, the film criticism,
59%
on why it might have been good. That's 59%. Not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
No,
for me, it's more. I would have guessed based on how I felt about it, 4, maybe 4%. That was going to be my guess.
but on the same token, here's something unusual: the audience is actually 1 percentage point lower.
That's interesting. That could go either way, though. Sometimes the audience loves it and the critics hate it, or vice versa, right? So,
Artie, is it as disappointing as the?
He's right. But both Marks liked it.
I absolutely saw that, and as I said on my own show, it is entirely possible for 2 incredibly bright men to be insanely wrong.
Well, I gotta delve into.
I'd be curious to know why they liked it. I mean, certainly there are some technical aspects of it that are very well done. Like I said, the photography is really good in places. I was impressed that they got the covers on the hats right.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, yeah. But before we go too far, if we're thinking this thing is utter trash, can we do Waterloo for a sec?
sure, let's talk about Waterloo.
Let's talk about Waterloo stem to stern. First of all, watch Waterloo, the movie, which gives you a far better sense of what was at stake in 100 Days. Because, by the way, you don't...
Who's playing the lead?
Rod Steiger.
Rod Steiger.
Okay, thank you.
Rod Steiger makes very, very... The first offense this movie commits, and it almost is an unforgivable sin on its face from a history perspective. It leads the audience to believe that Napoleon chose Waterloo as his fighting spot. There's that scene where he's walking around with the blocks of wood on the top of the map, and he says, "We'll stop him here at Waterloo."
That was
points,
Wellington's choice.
Yeah, he points at Waterloo. That's insane. It's offensive and stupid. But number two, he then goes to a battlefield where he's parked in a tent. Where that tent was relative to the rest of the battlefield, I don't know, because there's no terrain on the battlefield of Waterloo. The Duke of Wellington then does not conceal his men behind a ridge. They dig trenches. They dig trenches. I was staring at the screen going, there are trenches with sticks sticking out of them. Wherever did he see a picture of that? At Waterloo.
You weren't there.
I wasn't there. Then, when the Duke of Wellington has his men charge those trenches, they get out of those trenches in 3-deep line, which is really almost funny, and form square rather than staying in their trenches.
Okay. Well,
and then we get to the pièce de résistance, which everybody should make as their meme and keep it up forever. A British rifleman sights Napoleon through his scope.
Wait.
The Chris Kyle of Waterloo.
Well, hold on. No scopes back then?
Rifle scopes? No.
Hey, man.
Telescopes.
I'm just making it friendly family, for fuck's sakes.
We respect Mark's opinion on this and Frank's opinion for that matter, without agreeing with it. That is okay. It is okay to do that.
Yeah, and by the way, Andrew, my guy, Andrew, is a friend of everybody, and we tried to warn him. He went to go see it and almost had an attack. So this
is true too, right? And this is what I was getting at. There's lots of movies that lost money but really ended up making.
Oh yeah. No, of course.
The people running the studios will get their paychecks.
There's what I like to call it the Bugs Bunny count from that old cartoon. 1 for you, 1 for me, 2 for you, 1, 2 for me, 3 for you, 1, 2, 3 for me.
Yes.
Forrest Gump didn't make its money back.
Never has made money. Never has made money, according to the accountants.
According to the Hollywood accounting. Hollywood accounting is... So I'll assume that everyone listening tonight, with the possible exception of Dan, knows what we mean when we say Hollywood accounting. Okay?
Wow.
You can Google this. There are quite a few movies that, because people had a piece of them that the studios didn't want to get a piece, made sure that, no, we spent it. All
right.
No
Great
money.
pivot. Thank you, Frank. Let's talk about Waterloo. How does Waterloo get it right? Now, Waterloo, let's point out that Waterloo, when does Waterloo open? With the abdication, pretty much?
Yes, it opens with the famous scene of the marshals walking down the alley of the dark Fontainebleau with their heels clicking on the floor. Yeah,
so it's 1914, right after the brilliant campaign just east of Paris.
6 Days of Glory, all that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. So it's 1914, and the movie runs through basically the end of the Battle of Waterloo.
Yes.
Okay? So it's less ambitious in its time scope than Napoleon, Ridley Scott's.
And let's also be clear. I mean, that piece at the beginning is only like a preface. It's a short preface. The bulk of the runtime of the movie is 100 days.
Yes, that's absolutely right. That's probably Napoleon has his encounter with the fifth, maybe 20 minutes in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's a good 3 hours, as I recall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the vast majority of the movie is the 100 days. We get a lot of the narrative does a great deal of legwork to kind of build the stakes for Waterloo. Now, obviously, Waterloo, it's the battle itself, which is, as Jim pointed out, the kind of battle scene and you'll never see again, because they literally had to. Is it the Soviet army or the Romanian army or
Soviet? It's actually it's in Ukraine, so they'd say Ukrainian army, but it's
now back then they would say it's a Soviet army. Achilles, thanks so much. Oh, the knee mortars. Yes, the knee mortars. I remember that. So, Waterloo, in addition to the really good performances that we get, and I think it's easy to compare the two key performances. There's really two characters in the movie. Okay, there's Wellington and Napoleon, and everybody else is a side character. Okay, I'm not talking about Hollywood's definition of who's the main actor and who's a supporting actor, but everybody else is a side character. The movie is about them and their eventual collision at Waterloo. Okay.
Yep.
And we get a sense of, through the story and the screenplay, a sense of the building of those stakes to the Battle of Waterloo. We can also have the argument about, well, what happens if Napoleon wins? That doesn't really change the strategic situation.
No, the movie wants us to understand
but it works in the movie.
Waterloo is Waterloo.
2:14.
That's it.
How long is Ridley Scott's movie, by the way?
About
2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's about 2.5.
2.5 hours?
Yeah.
So it's 20 years, though, right? It starts in 1793.
Yeah.
And ends in technically 1921, but that's the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, the really good, by the way, free to watch HD master cut of Waterloo is 2 hours 14 minutes. Huh. Look at that.
There you go. But I mean, you also have great performances, and Steiger is so good that he overshadows Christopher Plummer, but I think part of that is because it is a bit of a flashier role. But I think the performances are thinking about it harder. I think the performances
French passion, English
reserve.
Reserve.
And callousness.
Yes.
And colonialist and
imperialist.
They don't really imperialist, sure. All those things. They're all the bad things that can be ascribed to the British.
But you're rolling right to the point, is that we're told the battle is the thing. We know the battle is the thing. It's in the title. It's not a secret.
Right. Nobody that didn't know what Waterloo was went to see that movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so
they didn't before, their spouse told them in the car on the way.
We're going to see what Waterloo concert. Yeah, is that the ABBA song? Yeah. So it's or the Waterloo Bridge, but these two men just come at each other over the course of the entire movie. You know what the stakes are. You know what the risks are. They point you to the map at the key moments, and you see it. It builds tension. It builds narrative. You understand what each of the people are doing. You can track them. You're introduced to them as characters. Yeah, they put in some characters like the romantic Hay, he's a real person, but and he dies at Waterloo as suggested. Sorry, spoilers. But that all the other characters, they have their moments. We get to meet Picton. We get to meet Gordon. We get to meet Ponsonby. We get to meet them. We get to know them. We get to give a shit about them, to borrow a phrase. And because of that, at certain points when they are affected by the battle, we respond emotionally. None of these things happen at any point in Napoleon. I never give a tinker's damn about one of the people in it.
I'm going to differ with you on that, actually.
Other than Eugene.
Eugene and Josephine. I think the performance is good. I think the writing could be better, but I thought in Josephine's case, it's well served, and I like the actress's performance. Those are the only two characters. Eugene, the kid, gets a minute of screen time. So there's that.
Guys, I'm going to say something really diplomatically controversial.
I got my finger on the boot ban button.
The dump button is live.
Okay.
Don't say that, Dan.
Was this Ridley Scott's Napoleon too woke?
I think that is an insipid question.
The only woke thing I could say, if woke means anything, I did not know, and I'm perfectly fine with cross-racial and cross-sex casting for all I care. Look, I love Shakespeare, so what am I going to talk about? But I didn't know who the African American marshal was supposed to be.
Dumas. He's not a marshal, though. He's just a general.
Oh, that's Dumas. Okay, then what's he doing there?
That's a great question.
He wouldn't have been there. Oh, okay.
But that's Dumas. That's in the cast list. I noticed that too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, then he doesn't. What it kind of casting is that's something where they
Well,
That's certainly far from the worst end of that movie. I'll put it that way.
Dumas does some interesting stuff and has an interesting relationship with Napoleon historically. Maybe
Absolutely.
that's in the director's cut. Who knows?
Yeah, no, okay, good. I missed that bit. All right, that's fair.
Oh, yeah, no, I knew that, but the
only place I'll defend myself is to say I have no idea what he's doing at the places where he is.
Right. So
because he is an amazing character. Agreed.
Yeah. I mean, we were not going to get every single Napoleonic battle, even the battles Napoleon was at.
No.
The number of battles we got in the movie was actually, I thought, higher than we would be likely to get from a Hollywood production of this kind.
Which is how many battles?
3.
5.
Well, you're counting. Okay, you've got the Battle of the Pyramids.
Yeah.
Toulon. Yeah. Toulon, Battle of the Pyramids, Austerlitz, Borodino, and Waterloo.
Yeah. That's almost Lord of the Ringish.
Okay, don't compare those two because those are.
No, I don't want to compare those two. Those
are well done battles.
There's an interesting, maybe that's outside the scope of this discussion, but there's probably an interesting conversation to have about the differences and similarities between adapting a work of fiction and adapting a work of events of history, right? Remember that, as I know Jim will fundamentally agree with this, that history is not this just set of facts, right? History is a narrative that we have constructed based on information that we have about what happened, right? We are always left with gaps, and the farther back in the past it is, the bigger the gaps are. In some cases, the gaps are centuries, right? So we have to fill those gaps in with our estimates based on documentation and on data, which you can get from a variety of different places. The archaeology, for example. So it's not as though there isn't room for interpretations of historical events that are maybe not in line with the current scholarly consensus or even the scholarly consensus of 100 years ago, right? In some sense, not in some sense, the job of the people making the movie, right, which is more than the director, is to tell a story that engages people and therefore makes the suits that make the decisions money, right? And I don't think this movie is successful at that. Now, the narrative problems, maybe we'll fix those in the director's cut, as Kingdom of Heaven certainly did. Is this, Jim, Ridley Scott's worst movie?
I've not seen the Gods and not Gods and Generals.
That wasn't Ridley Scott. That's a terrible movie. But...
Yeah. That movie is actually evil in a way.
Oh, there's Watch not what I'm talking about. Of that that's on.
Yeah. Go watch that and understand why I feel the way I do about that movie. No, what am I thinking of? It was the doggone it, Exodus, Gods and Kings. It's the only one of his movies that I've not seen.
I haven't seen that either,
and I'm told that it's legitimately awful. I can't say that I liked 1492. I can't say that I liked 1492.
I can't either.
But... I was working on my PhD at the time that came out, and I was an early modernist, so all the nerds went to see it, and we all kind of went, I don't know, I guess. It would certainly have to be listed as one of his worst.
Who did?
I think this is a worse movie than. I think Napoleon is a worse movie than Prometheus.
Who did Blade Runner?
Oh no, this is much worse than Prometheus. This is much worse than Prometheus.
Who did Blade Runner?
That's Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott has done many amazing. I mean, I think we said this. Ridley Scott has done many amazing movies. And Prometheus was really quite bad. I felt offended by the stupidity of Prometheus. I didn't feel offended by stupidity in Napoleon. I felt dismayed by what seemed to be a lack of care in constructing the movie. Now, did that happen at Ridley Scott's direction, or did that happen in the editing room and Ridley Scott said, sure, whatever, just give me director's cut after?
No.
Maybe the parts of Joaquin Phoenix's performance that make what we saw work got cut out. right? This has been known to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
A bad edit can destroy a movie.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, Ridley
Good edit
Scott
can
is
save a movie.
responsible for the final product. He's got to oversee the final product. Man.
The last duel was crap.
I actually did not manage to watch the entire thing.
The last duel is crap.
Before my HBO Max
just said it was
subscription
good before.
expired.
No, that's the Duelists.
Oh, the Duelist. Scusi.
Yeah.
The Duelist
is
is Adam Driver and
Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, who plays a French nobleman, which is
so great.
An interesting piece of casting, along with an interesting haircut.
Oh, this movie's recent.
Oh yeah, last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Post Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Now I will say this. I will say this.
Like 50 years old, Dan. Almost 50 years old.
No, I'm talking about the new goddamn Star Wars.
In response to the comment that was made, I am open to the concept that I'm madder about this movie because of what it was.
This is a really interesting point because
this is a narrative.
I don't think that In Contempt is what we're after here. I think the movie portrays and depicts a banal Napoleon rather than a despicable Napoleon. There's nothing particularly remarkable about this Napoleon.
Why despicable and banal? Isn't there another?
But this banal part is one of the things that's the most aggravating.
He's that banal.
I think that's a weird position.
Artie asked the question earlier. Why does anybody listen to this guy? Why don't people punch him in the face? But Napoleon, why do people listen to Napoleon? Why do they follow him? How did he lead them? How did he lead a nation? How could this be?
We're talking about it.
Character was.
Whether you end up being more or less pro or anti-Napoleon, understand that Napoleon has had more books written about him than everyone else in history except Jesus.
Yep.
So
that's wicked, man.
Yeah. Literally hundreds of thousands of books have been written about Napoleon. And yet in this movie, he is uninteresting as written by whoever wrote the screenplay and directed by Ridley Scott and performed by Joaquin.
There's gotta be a reason.
Why is it a bad movie? Because we've listed, by the way, a number of reasons that have nothing to do with history.
I think so.
Nothing to do with history.
I think so. I mean, we could honestly go for another hour talking about what the history gets wrong.
Maybe
that's less interesting, right? I could say go read the Wikipedia article, right? That'll give you at least a start on why it sucks.
Maybe he owes
from
money
that
to
standpoint. William Aarons, thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree with this. William, I
would move to Europe for this.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I say, if it's done, and again, Artie was good enough to link earlier on my article about this. If it's done with the quality of that French Revolution movie, I'm paying real money for that.
Yeah,
I'm paying real money.
Go buy a different regions DVD player. I mean,
can and have.
That good, yeah.
Because for years you couldn't get Waterloo in America in a NTSC version. For years it was only.
Yes.
I just wasn't popular.
One of those things.
People just didn't, it was a thing. And now, of course, you can get what I have right here. There it is. My deluxe Blu-ray copy, which came with all sorts of fun little inserts. But so it wasn't available here. But there's just a lot of other.
I want to close with maybe we'll close with this. Actually,
well, can we comment about this? Because remember what we're all hoping for. Speaking of Stanley Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick famously wrote a Napoleon movie, and that movie, according to all of the dirt sheets, is in the hands of the person you mentioned earlier, Steven Spielberg.
Now, this was defunded as a result of the commercial non-success of Waterloo.
Politics.
And now, allegedly, Spielberg is preparing a multi-part Napoleon based on that script.
Okay, hold on.
I will be happy to provide. I will pay for an entire year of HBO Now or HBO Turbo
Plus,
or whatever the hell they're called, whatever it's called,
super powered or
to watch.
Where did you get that info? Who's your source?
Variety.
Variety and Hollywood Reporter are the sources for Hollywood.
You know what? I hope they ain't bullshitting because
The
But no,
Canadian
just because it's being-
running on Variety. This shall not stand.
Just because it's being worked on doesn't mean it's going to happen.
No,
right?
no, you this is Hollyweird. You could get this thing completely done. It could be sitting on a hard drive somewhere, and it never gets released.
Spielberg.
The Batgirl, well, that means something. But this assumes also that Steven Spielberg stays interested in it. He could be like, "Oh, squirrel."
Yep. Squirrel.
Right?
Yep.
So-
100%.
Yeah. So he's been talking about this for a long time, but he's also finished up other, outstanding Kubrick project and AI too. So I would have been super interested in a Kubrick Napoleon movie. I'll be very interested to see what Steven Spielberg comes up with.
Absolutely.
I would be shocked if it wasn't immeasurably better than what we got from Ridley Scott.
If you're saying it's that bad, man, Spielberg, are you kidding me, man?
I'm not even telling people don't go see it. I mean, by all means, people go see it, make up your own mind.
Yeah, but to talk about politics and wrap up, I think you made this point already. The reason, because remember, Kubrick has just released 2001, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he is the biggest deal on the planet in terms of movies.
In the universe!
The universe! And even as that happens, we just had Sergei Bondarchuk release his War and Peace, which we don't know how much that movie cost because the Soviet the Soviet Union money. Wasn't talking.
Yeah,
it was infinite Soviet money, which shows in every frame. That too. By the way, kids, it's entirely available on YouTube, high def with subtitles. Go watch it. 8 hours, baby. Soak it in. That's a good movie. Now, that comes out. We have no idea how much it is. It was stupid Soviet money because they weren't. Mosfilms wasn't talking. And then, as you say, his other movie done with Dino De Laurentiis.
I'm ready to spend too much on this. If you go over budget, you will be shot.
Yeah, right. Your Sergei, your movie, very good. But remember, it wins a foreign language Oscar for best foreign film. So, it gets well regarded. So that allows him to go and do Waterloo, which then, of course, takes a huge faceplant. And right after that, the money dries up. And this script, which is a Kubrick script, which heaven knows I'm certainly willing to give it a shot, languishes.
Yeah, maybe it won't be awesome, but I find it difficult to believe that it'll be worse than this.
I'm in, no matter what.
All right. So I think that we have complained enough. As Jim, has this been sufficiently cathartic?
Have I yelled about all this? I yelled about Egypt.
Hold on. Look at this. This hits me hard. It hits me hard.
Jim's double checking against the Book of Grudges.
It hits me hard. What the hell does an American have to talk about Napoleon?
What? No.
More than the pepper.
In general, okay, but the general American ain't watching this show. So
Americans. If you're talking about jaywalking Americans, they can't fit their own Civil War into the correct half century.
Americans by and large don't care about history in general.
Yeah, so
nothing against Napoleon specifically.
And by the way, Artie, I don't want to let it pass. Book of Grudges, very nice. I like that.
Didn't say we weren't geeks here, folks.
Yeah. Nerds. But no, let's see. We talked about lack of narrative. We talked about Waterloo. We talked about No Terrain. We talked. Oh, the last one, and it was the reference that I think Achilles made, and this was actually from my son. Cossacks. The way they treat Cossacks. First of all, the 1812. Why is this a bad movie? My son was scandalized by how poor the quality of the filmmaking was around the invasion of Moscow. It looked like a high school film project.
Super cheap. Yeah, it was. I noticed that too. It's like when they're there, it looks like, was this like done in reshoots or something?
Yeah, it was terrible. It's just purely technically. It's just bad film. But then the way they treat Cossacks, which are an integral, vital part of the 1812 stories, they don't attack the way they did. They get treated as, my son, he coined the phrase, like babushka ninjas. Who go running around with 2-inch British knee mortars. So
weird.
It's so weird. And so babushka ninjas. So babushka ninjas have entered into the parlance of my group.
I don't see it.
It's look. Here's the I actually asked AI to draw me babushka ninjas, and they're fun. They're fun. When you step back from it, it's an immense disappointment. Thank you again. When you step back from it, it's an immense disappointment, and the disappointment comes out of love. I love the period. I wanted to love this. I wanted to love it, but it sucks. It sucks desperately. We'll live. We'll forget about this, and we'll have these 10 things to watch for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly an immense.
I know what you mean, man. I know.
Yeah, it's like, am I wound up about it? Of course I am. I love this stuff. But at the end of the day, we'll have these really great things to look at, and that's why I wrote this piece. In part, it was just to say, look, rather than look at this junk pile, let's move to the good things we have and enjoy them.
Creative works do not just die, right? Unless they are buried or lost, which does occasionally happen.
Yeah,
right.
Well, like Abel Gance's Napoleon is hard to get.
Still, it's hard to get, but you can still find it. You could find this, immense Soviet War and Peace rendition on YouTube of all places where you can just watch it, so that you can still. These things won't go away. The Ridley Scott has not taken anything from us other than the 2.5 hours. And whatever it costs for tickets.
Yeah, $10.
Artie, for you, I don't know, Jim, if you're a big Lord of the Rings fan. I know Artie is. But was it as disappointing as, I don't know what company did the Lord of the Rings? Was it Amazon?
You mean the new Lord of the Rings?
The
new Lord Rings of Power? The Rings of Power?
Show, yeah, the series.
I've not watched. I'm not interested.
I have watched it, and it was disappointing. But no
episodes. What's the company that made that?
Amazon? Or are you talking about the Hobbit movies?
No, I'm talking about the goddamn Lord of the Rings, the new one that's out now.
That's
Rings of Power.
That's Rings of Power. No, it's disappointing, but it was not incoherent.
It was not incoherent.
It was not incoherent. Now, I'm more likely to get my knickers in a bunch about faithfulness to source material for that than I am the historical stuff. To be honest,
Sure.
Which is weird, right. But there you go.
Me too.
But by the end of the season, I was like, okay, there's a lot that I didn't like about this, but there is some stuff that I did like, and there were some clever things in terms of story structure that they did. So I didn't hate it nearly as bad as this. As a Tolkien geek, I will condemn it as a half-hearted disaster, but I think at least it's watchable, right? Okay. If you know nothing about Tolkien and you go into that, you will still know nothing about Tolkien, but you may have enjoyed it.
Right.
If you know nothing about Napoleon and you give Ridley Scott your $10, you will leave the theater knowing nothing about Napoleon except the shape of his hat, which they get right, and you'll be baffled as to what happened, why it happened, what order things happened in, who all these people were, and why anybody thought this person was competent enough to be the emperor, let alone the man that conquered most of Europe.
That's pretty sad.
Yeah, no, the only thing I'll say about Lord of the Rings is I actually loved, for all its flaws, and it's flawed, I loved the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I could not stand The Hobbit.
No.
I thought the first 40 minutes or so of the first one were very well done.
Yeah, and after that, I saw the first one, I swore off the other two, and I told people, go watch the Rankin Bass hour and a half. It is much better.
Watch that. Wonderful. I watch that right around Christmas every year. The Rankin Bass Hobbit. It's
delightful, and the soundtrack with Glenn Yarborough.
Is it complete?
Hour and they do
the Hobbit.
They do the whole thing. And I just had a conversation. Same guy I went to Napoleon with. We had this conversation at dinner. The Hobbit is a children's story.
Yeah,
it's a story to be told to your child at night, which was J.R.R.'s intent. And the way they do it in the Rankin Bass version, it plays like a children's. It's got scary monsters and brave heroes and adventure. It's perfect. Well, no, it's not perfect. It's very, very good.
You're right.
Yeah, it's very good.
And you should watch it.
Yeah. All right, folks. Jim, I'd like to say thanks for coming here, but I probably raised your blood pressure, so I probably should have sent you a check. rather than provide Jim impetus for a stroke.
Thanks, Jim. That was a lot of fun, man.
They got me on statins. I'm good.
So that's good. That's good. We'll have to share statin stories when you come to Origins next time. Okay,
We'll do. One of these days, I keep forgetting what a nerd you are. I got to smuggle you into the Marquette University Library.
Oh, that might be interesting. Oh,
This
aren't Tolkien papers there?
They are all there.
Yeah.
Back in the day before Tolkien was anything, they would let us down there, and I've actually thumbed through the original Hobbit.
Oh wow,
Really?
That'd be something else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's they don't let you do that anymore.
The English printing? The English printing?
No, it's handwritten.
The manuscript.
Yeah.
And it's not a typescript. It's a manuscript written in longhand.
In a weird
hold on,
Elvish.
why does the States have that?
Well, no, the answer to that is my understanding of the story is that the only school to make an offering, because remember, we all think of Tolkien as this force in culture and literature. He was dismissed. He was dismissed. Those are fairy stories, and those are just goofy kids stories.
Even near the end, man.
That's for kids, and eventually became a thing for stoners in college. Frodo lives and all that stuff.
Remember, Tolkien passed away in 71, 72, 73, something like that.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get to see a lot of that. And certainly there was all kinds. He had money at the end, but he wasn't like world famous.
No, he wouldn't have been had his literature taken off the way, a fraction of what, George R.R. Martin stuff is. Yeah, he and I don't know as Tolkien would have liked that, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't think he would have liked a lot of the things that have come of his books. But in any event, no, those are all there. Go check them out.
God damn.
All right, folks, we have had enough. We are almost at an hour and a half. So, Jim, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Dan, we'll see you on Thursday. Don't forget to tune into our regular Thursday show because this has been a special episode. So, everybody have a great night. Dan, don't go anywhere. Jim, you can hang around too if you want.
Big move. Big win. The moose is loose. Big moves. Big win. The moose is loose. Big moves. Big win. The moose is loose. Big. Big. Big.